Well, hello and welcome everyone to the 20th day of December, and a beautiful day out there right here in Brisbane, 27 degrees with sunny conditions, and that's the way it's going to be at this point in time. So today we've got lots to talk about. First of all, the bad news, the tragedy coming out of Tasmania, our heart breaks out. Now a third child has been reported dead.
As the community continues to grieve, the memorial outside Hillcrest Primary School continues to grow. Prime Minister Scott Morrison and his wife Jenny wiping away tears as they made their contribution. The Morrison family laying down a bouquet of flowers with a message of love and support for those children killed here on Thursday, their families and those that remain in a critical condition in hospital.
It is unimaginable as a parent to think what they're going through. You don't even want to contemplate it in your own head. And so they will need time. They will need stillness and they'll need quiet.
Tasmanian leaders were also drawn to the site to offer their condolences.
I'd like to assure the families and the broader community that we're going to stand with them through what's going to be a really horrific and long road to recovery.
The morning began in Devonport with the usual Saturday park run, but without one of its regulars, 11-year-old Addison Stewart, one of those killed at Hillcrest Primary.
As a respect for those who've been affected, we would like to take just a moment's silence.
Many runners wearing green and aqua, Addison's favourite colours.
Go!
18-year-old Zoe Smith was one of many Devonport locals desperate to find a way to help. She started a GoFundMe page to support the victims' families over Christmas and had a goal of raising $1,000. But after 2 days and more than 15,000 donations, the page has raised well over $1 million.
It's just beyond anything we could have comprehended, and I'm so proud of our community for donating and how generous they have been.
She's now partnering with the local council, the state government and a local bank to continue to raise money through a community fund, so fees won't be taken from donations. Devonport Mayor Annette Rockcliffe promising every cent will go to those who need it most.
We want to confirm that every $10 or $20 will go to a family in that area, to the school community itself or to those families directly affected.
$500,000 will also be made available by the Tasmanian Government for those impacted by this tragedy, and the Prime Minister has promised the Commonwealth will play its part.
$800,000 to support families and communities affected in counselling support, $250,000 for first responders, $550,000 for the broader community. Australia are big-hearted people. They feel the tragedies that others experience, and their instinct is just to reach out and to console and support.
A community trying to do everything it can to ease the pain. Will Murray, ABC News.
Isn't that wonderful to see that GoFundMe started by the little girl there has gained so much support, and that the community has opened up their hearts and saying, get very emotional with those kind of news there. Well, of course, moving on, let's look at the second report and on that same incident. So as we know that the community has been coming out in large numbers with the condolences messages, flowers and teddy bears and the likes. So it's good to see that the support that is being provided. Of course, the tragedy is a tragedy, and of course we cannot bring them back, but at least we can say that pain. Right now, to Redcliffe, where 2 adults and 2 children have been killed in that fatal crash.
4 people have died in a light plane crash northeast of Brisbane this morning. Authorities have just been speaking about the incident. For more details, we're now joined by reporter Stephanie Zillman. Steph, what's known about the crash?
Good afternoon, Miriam. Well, as you mentioned there, we just had a briefing from police and the ATSB just a short time ago and learned that after 9 a.m. this morning, a joyride took off from Redcliffe Aerodrome carrying the pilot, one adult and 2 children. It disappeared into mangroves shortly thereafter, and a nearby plane saw it overturned in the water. We learned that the pilot was 69 years of age and actually had family who were present at the aerodrome at the time of the accident and understandably have been very distressed. Police said that it's a highly complex investigation and they're bringing in specialist experts from Canberra to assist. The plane went down in ankle-deep water in mangroves, and the ATSB Chief Commissioner Angus Mitchell spoke about it a short time ago.
We're working with Queensland Police to determine the cause of this accident this morning. I have my Brisbane team are already on the site starting to gather evidence, and I have another team of investigators coming up from Canberra in the morning to assist them. And that team will be made up of people with both aircraft operations and maintenance expertise, where we will, of course, get any evidence we can from the actual plane itself, but equally from other sources such as air traffic control and witnesses.
That was the ATSB Chief Commissioner Angus Mitchell speaking a short time ago. He said an initial report will be prepared about the likely cause of the crash in about 6 to 8 weeks. Police are still working to confirm the identities of the other 3 passengers.
So what a tragedy. There there's so many tragedies that are happening, just in and around the Christmas time. And of course, we will have to watch out for the roads as well, as the road fatality always grows around this time as well. Well, right now we go to the New South Wales, where that freak, in a severe storm. And as you can see by the debris that it's been thrown all about and all over the places, so it's caused a real havoc, and 1 person has died after the severe storm swept across Sydney's northern beaches.
I think this is a tornado. Oh my God! Oh my God!
And you can see the roofs just flying off, torn off just like that. Yeah. And now to our next report, which is about Australia and its volcanic eruptions, and how does that impact our environment?
They're destructive and explosive, but are some volcanic eruptions actually beneficial? When Australian scientists visited Heard Island in 2016, they were surprised to see its volcano, Big Ben, erupting.
I had a sore face from smiling on the first day.
Now scientists are stepping closer to quantifying its role in fighting climate change. Heard Island is a remote subantarctic island about 4,000 kilometres southwest of Perth. When Big Ben erupts, iron makes its way into the atmosphere. Eventually it settles into the sea, where it nourishes the phytoplankton, microscopic plants at the base of the food chain. The phytoplankton take carbon out of the atmosphere and store it, slowing down the warming of the planet.
It's my personal belief that it's pretty much erupting all the time.
Volcanic eruption can take the leads and becomes the biggest emission source of emission.
There seems to be a bit of a problem with that audio on that clip. We can get the one channel, which is the sound of the eruptions and other thing, but the other channel, which has the voice, does not seem to be coming through. Well, right now, let's take a look at when will the hospitalizations increase and what's going to happen now that borders are opening and people are moving about.
Christmas right around the corner. A lot of people are very nervous about what it actually means for families gathering together to celebrate. So how can you best keep yourself and your loved ones safe from COVID? Well, let's ask Dr. Norman Swan, who's the presenter of RN's Health Report and the ABC Coronacast, who joins us now from Sydney. Thank you so much, Dr. Norman Swan. Now, You know, let's start off with New South Wales. We're starting to see the cases there, you know, the case numbers there start to rise. It's very concerning. Authorities, though, are pushing back against pressure to try to put more restrictions on. Should there be more restrictions, or should it be a case of, you know, herd immunity? Is that what the authorities are trying to do?
Well, there's two things that are going on with the authorities. Remember, this is the government that gave us the Northern Beaches last Christmas, gave us the June outbreak, which then spread to Victoria, and the failed LGA strategy. So they don't, you know, despite the hero status of New South Wales, they don't have a great track record. And there's this rhetoric at federal and state level now of individual responsibility. And that is against all public health principles. We don't have public health individual responsibility when it comes to drink driving, when it comes to childhood immunisation, when it comes to seatbelts. We insist you've got to have rules in place. And when you've got a pandemic growing where we're not quite sure of the nature of the Omicron virus, then that is a dangerous way to proceed, when there are simple things that one could do to maintain freedom and try to avoid lockdown. Because if this goes pear-shaped in New South Wales and Victoria, the hospital system could really be under stress. If we get 25,000 cases, if New South Wales gets 25,000 cases a day as they predict, and it could well do so, you could have as many as 700 cases a day going into hospital. If you look at London at the moment, we've got a major surge going on. The number of people, health workers on furlough has doubled in the last 4 days, and they're predicting it could be 1 in 3 on furlough by New Year's Eve. And as you saw there from South Australia, our healthcare systems nationally are already under stress, independent of COVID.
Dr. Norman Swan, ATAGI is refusing to change the 5-month wait time in the vaccine rollout. How wise is that?
Well, you can tell how wise that might be, or the criticism that's going on behind the scenes, the fact that New South Wales is talking about going it alone at 4 months. There's a lot of frustration around about ATAGI. They're taking a purist evidence position, which is actually not actually an evidence-based position. It's more based on Israeli data, and Israel is a Pfizer country. The British data show significant waning of Astra against Omicron at about 15 weeks. And really, if you wanted to start, we, particularly Victorians, but also New South Wales people, really came forward to get AstraZeneca and are reasonably protected against hospitalisation, but that's not entirely clear. We really should be moving to 4 months at a minimum, so that people who've had Astra, particularly those are older people who are more at risk, can be covered. Professor Alan Cheng at the weekend wrote an op-ed for the 9 newspapers saying we're playing the long game here in terms of ATAGI. Well, I think what we've learned in this pandemic is there is no long game. We thought we only had Delta to deal with over Christmas, and now we've got Omicron.
Just before you move on, I just want you to repeat something. You said AstraZeneca fades after 15 weeks. Is that correct?
So
I'm asking because I have AstraZeneca.
So do I. And so the data from Britain shows that the protection against, so I've got to be careful about this, symptomatic disease goes to 0 at 15 weeks. Now, there's almost certainly still hospitalisation protection at 15 weeks, but protection against symptomatic infection disappears at 15 weeks. And therefore, there's a degree of urgency for AstraZeneca recipients to actually receive a booster just to give them maximum protection. It's likely hospitalisation maintains for a while, but we don't know that for sure.
You know, Dr. Swan, we have been told that we need to look at the hospitalisation rates rather than the infection rates. And at this stage, yeah, the infection rates are definitely rising. Our hospitalisation rates isn't that high as yet. But we have been told, too, that there is a time lag. When will that time lag reduce? When will the hospitalisation rates start to pick up?
Well, if you look at Denmark, and this comes to the severity issue, we still don't know for sure whether this is a milder virus. You can't extrapolate from South Africa to Australia and other countries. Denmark has shown that the hospitalisation rates are ticking up actually ahead of where you would see it with Delta. And this is a virus that's actually doubling every 2 or 3 days. So we still don't know about the severity. So you could see hospitalization in New South Wales ticking up quite soon. Probably not to the extent that we saw with Delta, because people are immunized. But the problem is it doesn't take too many cases for the hospital system to be overwhelmed. And if you're going to go to 700 cases a day, that vastly exceeds what New South Wales, or indeed Victoria, experienced during the winter outbreaks.
What does this then all mean for Christmas? You know, we're all gearing up for our family gatherings, for our Christmas parties and not. Are you going to tell us that Christmas is cancelled?
No, I'm not. I think that there are fairly simple rules. First of all, I do think that there should be mask mandates. Small bars and nightclubs should be shut for the time being. They're high-risk spreading events. You saw that in South Australia. The world will not come to an end if nightclubs shut.
Well, correctly said that the world will not come to an end if we have the pubs and the nightclubs shut down. People can enjoy at home, enjoy with their families. And I do agree with him that, we needed to have a more consistent across the board, across the nation sort of rules. And right now, each and every state is doing their own things. The party politics comes into play as well. So look, everyone's done quite well, but there is always room for improvement, and all I'm saying is that it could have been slightly better managed. Well, right now, let's go overseas, where looking at Christmas, as Dr. Norman Swan was talking about that, Netherlands is announcing very strict rules around Christmas.
Hours before the lockdown was announced, Dutch shoppers rushed to buy last-minute Christmas gifts.
There's a long queue. Apparently I'm not the only one who thought they'd better shop today.
The new
Omicron variant is spreading quite quickly, and I'm pretty worried about it. If a lockdown is needed, well, that's fine by me.
That's exactly what they got. The Prime Minister saying a new lockdown was unavoidable because of Omicron.
Nederland gaat nog een keer op slot.
The Netherlands is again shutting down. Omicron is spreading even faster than we feared. And so we must act now.
The new rules are the toughest yet in response to Omicron. Christmas gatherings will be limited. Only 2 guests will be allowed into homes, 4 over the holidays. All non-essential businesses will shut until mid-January.
Their circumstances are quite different to Australia, as well as the fact that they are going into a cold European winter. In fact, they're already there, but they're going into the depths of winter. With a vastly higher case rate and sadly having had a vastly higher loss of life.
The Netherlands has...
Well, yes, that might be the case, that they on the other side of the world where the weather is completely different to what it is here. But if we leave our international borders open, people start coming in, so will the virus. Well, right now, keeping on, we have looked at the real estate market and the weekly update with Usha Chandra of GlobeNet Realty. But what is the markets or the global housing market doing?
Renowned for its year-round warmth and spectacular desert vista, Phoenix, Arizona has long been the mecca of those living north in winter. But when the pandemic hit, it became a refuge for Americans feeling captive in big cities.
Everything is super fast. If you hesitate at all, you're out. Some properties are receiving as much as 20 to 30 offers on day one. That's how crazy our market has shifted.
It's now one of the country's hottest housing markets. In the year to June, prices jumped 35%.
A house that used to be $500,000 is now $800,000. And you just kind of shake your head like, that's what you're getting for that amount of money? It's insane.
That heat is locking out many first-time homebuyers like Amy and David Guerrero. They now finally have their dream home, but to crack in, they were forced to double their budget.
We probably looked at over 100 houses in person and thousands online. And eventually it turned into, okay, new listing is up. I'd call her. We'd run to the house, we'd look in the windows, we'd call the agent, try to get an appointment to get in it later that day or the next day, and then make an offer that same day, because that's how competitive it was getting. 2 days in, the houses would be sold. and it'd either be a cash offer that was way over asking price or somebody waiving inspection.
But it's not just the pandemic demand. The surge has also been fueled by low interest rates, a housing shortage and rapidly rising inflation.
Now that also makes sense right here as well. That is a similar scenario here as well, and we will be covering that in a little bit more detail on Wednesday with the real estate update, which will be the last one for this year. Well, right now, looking at Norway. So Norway has the world's largest gingerbread town. Some good news. And isn't that amazing? Well done, Norway. Well, right now, from Norway, we head off to Hong Kong, where the polls are now open.
A lot of police, but not many voters. A heavy security presence floods Hong Kong streets to discourage protests as the city goes to the polls. Candidate Holden Chow has every reason to be confident. The prominent member of Hong Kong's biggest pro-Beijing party is almost a sure thing to win a
And
seat
it must be
in the
tough for
Legislative
the
Council.
candidates there, being masked and trying to gather some information and support
What Chow
with
calls
the
an
candidates there.
improvement involves the disqualification of many pro-democracy candidates who would normally be his rivals.
The opposition, they stirred up a lot of conflict.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you in this segment. And don't forget that at 10 a.m. we are back when Gillian will be here in the studio with me, and we'll be covering the Maurice Blackburn's monthly series, and that is going to be lots of things that we're going to be talking about. And in this segment, Gillian will be talking about workers' compensation. How does this affect you? What your rights are? What can you do? What should employers do? And what should employers not do as well? So all those we will be covering at 10 a.m. Would love to see you all back at 10 when Gillian Barrett from Maurice Blackburn joins me right here in this studios. Until that time, is goodbye. Oh yes, before I go, we'll bring all the latest events from tomorrow. As we know, there was lots of functions and events that did manage to happen in the weekend, despite all the restrictions. The restrictions being that people had to show proof of their double vaccination. So well done on the organizers on, complying with those regulations and still going ahead with the functions. There's quite a lot to report on, which we will do tomorrow after all the photos and video clips have been downloaded. We will bring to you all those reports. As we know, Rhythm India Club was launched, and DJJ, yes, had the Mata Ki Chonki and the economical Christmas that happened in Bapengari, and other functions there as well, which we've got a report on. But that's tomorrow. Right now, I'll say goodbye because we are meeting back at 10 a.m. when Gillian Barrett comes in here with the studio with me. Until that time, it's goodbye from me.